Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today we're going to be going over 10 USFL players that deserve a chance in the NFL. So starting off with a few honorable mentions, we have Panthers kicker Cole Murphy, Stars wide receiver Maurice Alexander, and Generals defensive tackle Toby Johnson. So these players are in no particular order, starting off with Stallions outside linebacker DeMarcus Gates. So DeMarcus Gates has spent time in the AAF, XFL, and now USFL, and he was really good in the USFL. I think he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. He's like the Micah Parsons of the USFL. He can do everything. He can rush the passer, he can play in coverage, and he does everything at a very high level. And he has played in the NFL before. He got an NFL contract following his stint in the AAF and XFL. So I think it's time he adds USFL to that list after having a great season and helping the Stallions defense be one of the best defenses in the USFL. And I think he deserves another chance in the USFL. Next, we have Gamblers defensive end Chris Odom. So Odom does have NFL experience. He led the USFL with 12.5 sacks, the only player with more than 10. He also led the league in forced fumbles with 6. And he was a big player on special teams with 4 blocked kicks. And was also a very good run defender with 6 tackles for a loss. So he's everything you would look for in your 4-3 defensive end. Because he can rush the passer. He can even play special teams. And he's also good in the run. So, and I think several NFL teams would definitely look to bring him in for training camp because he could do everything, as I pointed out, and at a pretty good level. Next, we have Stars quarterback Case Cookus. So Cookus is definitely the best quarterback in the USFL. He did suffer a broken leg in the USFL championship, so he won't be ready for training camp of the NFL training camp. But once he recovers, he could definitely be an NFL backup. He's even got good size at 6'4", and he also has a good ability to extend plays with his legs. Although he's not the fastest guy, he did have a 79-yard touchdown run against the Panthers during the season. So, Case Cookus definitely deserves a chance. He was one of the most exciting players to watch, and he led one of the best offenses in the USFL. Next, we have Stallions wide receiver and return specialist Victor Bolden. So he was named USFL Championship Game MVP. Although he is very small for a receiver, standing at only 5'9", he could be a great kick returner, as all teams could definitely use something like a good return specialist. He's also very good when he's got the ball in his hands and when he's out in space. He also has NFL experience, but his NFL career was derailed after a performance-enhancing drug suspension. So he could definitely be return specialist, as a lot of teams I feel like could use Victor Bolden. But he can also play as a slot receiver. He's a small, shifty player who can definitely make people miss and is good with the ball in his hands, as I mentioned before. Next, we have Stallions inside linebacker Scoby Ray. So, similar to DeMarcus Gates, his Scoby Ray Stallions teammate, who I talked about before, Scoby Ray also spent time in the AAF and XFL before joining the USFL. He did deal with a few injuries in the USFL, but when he was on the field, he was really good in stopping the run, also good in pass coverage, had a big interception in the USFL championship game, and I feel like he definitely deserves a chance in the USFL, although injuries could be a concern, but I think he's good enough where if he misses a game here or there in the USFL, the rest of his games make up for that. Next, we have Gamblers linebacker Donald Payne. So he's another player with NFL experience. He actually played 30 games in 4 NFL seasons. Most recently in 2020 before needing surgery on both his feet. And then he bounced around on practice squads before winding up in the USFL with the Gamblers. So he's a bit undersized at only 6 foot, 225. But he can still play at a high level. And so USFL players use the USFL for different reasons. Whether it's just to get back to the NFL on practice squads. But for Donald Payne, it was to get back on a 53-man roster. And he had a league high 117 tackles. And I saw a very interesting stat regarding Donald Payne. So he finished with 117 tackles. And the second place finisher finished with 75. And that is the same gap between the first and second place as the second and 18th place. So that goes to show how much of an impact Donald Payne had on that Gamblers defense. Next, we have Generals wide receiver Cavante Turpin. So he was actually named the USFL MVP, and much like wide receiver Victor Bolden, he's very dangerous with the ball in his hands, also very small for the position, at only 5'9". But Turpin is very, very good when he's out in space with the ball in his hands. He had 2 punt return touchdowns. Also led the USFL in receiving yards on an offense that is one of the most run-first offenses in the USFL. And he's also a factor in the run game. He can be used. I think you can even use him out of the backfield. But he's also effective on jet sweeps and stuff like that. So another player who could be used as a return specialist and as a slot receiver. And after seeing Turpin and Bolden, I think they're very similar players, both small, both return specialists, could be good slot receivers. I think I would actually prefer Turpin based off the production of last season. I know Bolden did miss a game or two, but I think Turpin was a little bit more productive, so I think I would actually prefer him on my team over Victor Bolden, but both are good options. Next, we have Stars cornerback Channing Stripling. So Stripling is the only quarterback on this list. He was great in the USFL. He had 7 interceptions in 10 games. And while he isn't the fastest player for the position, he ran a 4.6 40-yard dash. But he could be good in a defense that runs a lot of zone coverage because his speed, as I mentioned, it could be a weakness in man coverage running with receivers throughout the field. But zone coverage, he was very good in. Also, is a ball hawk, had 7 interceptions, as I mentioned. Next, we have Breakers edge rusher Davin Bellamy. So he got off to a monster start this season with 3 sacks in the season opener, but then he slowed down. He's one of the best pass rushers in the USFL, and another USFL player that's looking to get back on a 53-man roster, as he is another player with NFL experience. And the final player on today's list is Stallions running back Bo Scarborough. So Scarborough is an NFL caliber running back. The only thing he lacks is true breakaway speed. He has good size at 6'1", 228, and he has the ability to break tackles, extend the play, fight through initial contact. He has good power, also is a pretty good pass catcher, and can make defenders miss in open field. So he may not be a 3-down back, but he could be a very good backup running back to have, or like a power back in the NFL. So those are my 10 USFL players that deserve a chance in the NFL. Let me know if I missed any players, if you agree with my list, disagree, and why. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.